So if you quite like spotlight yourself. Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And the reason I thought it might be useful to do that is that, as has been kind of hinted, I'm retiring. Actually, I'm retiring from this role at the end of this month, so it's rather soon. But I do have a bit of a tail, by the looks of it, of small amount of paid work and possibly some voluntary work still in the field with Dyfi and the Biosphere for some time. But yes, I will cease to be the effective Biosphere coordinator for the Dyfi at the end of this month, and all being well, there'll be an acting Biosphere coordinator for the Dyfi called Jane Powell, who we know and love over here. So that's the good news of people who are wishing us goodwill, which is, I'm sure, everybody. It may be useful to my successor, not to Jane, but the team. But we haven't got very long, so it's not going to be a lot of detail. I hope to give you a quick gallop about where the Dyfi Biosphere is and what it is amongst the other members of the family of World Network of Biosphere Reserves. A few bits on what we've done using the structures, the collaboration and the brand, if you like, of the Biosphere. And then what I've been asked to do is bring some reflections about being a coordinator. And I've termed that light touch coordinator for reasons that will become apparent. And if I just click the right button, I can share a screen. I do have some pictures. I've got too many pictures. I'm just going to have to whistle through some of them. Let's see if that works. What can you see?
Perfect.
Okay, so I will go quickly, but obviously we can have discussions at the end. So our mission as the Dyfi Biosphere reflects probably all the UK missions because it's drawn from the Euromab communications toolkit, inspiring people and organizations working together to create sustainable futures we can all be proud of. And we've got here connecting people with nature and cultural heritage, which is very common to the whole family, while strengthening the local economy. But what I will point out is that in our interpretation of the meeting local needs and situation, we place the cultural heritage very highly alongside the natural heritage in our mission, and particularly Welsh language, culture and heritage, because we are living in a bilingual community and a bilingual context. So that's a distinguishing feature of ours. Here we are in the middle of Wales, but on the coast, and we do have a modest marine element as well. But I have to say, we've done very little as a biosphere with the marine element so far, and that's something that should change. It's not very large, and let me see later on just how small it is in comparison to the others. So this is a bit more up close. You can see it's pretty much based on the river catchment, but we have tweaked that somewhat. So we've included down the south, the town of Aberystwyth, because that's where all the people live. So they're in a different catchment. And more recently, after the periodic review, so the 10-yearly reporting cycle, the last couple of years, we've welcomed in 5 smaller communities around the edge because they wanted in as well, on socioeconomic grounds more than the natural history, really. And I won't dwell on this, but just to indicate, as we all have, we have a core area. So in our case, it does include the marine, but also the estuary. And this is the lowland peat bog called Sochno. And then there's a small woodland site here. And they are heavily designated with statutory designations, both UK and European level. So that brings the protection. And as you all know, this much larger area, the transition area zone of cooperation, has no statutory protection, and we're always keen to project our collaborative activities as opportunities to collaborate with no force of law behind them and no obligation and no restriction. And then buffer zones, which we're going to just now. But we don't tend to use that map. We tend to use this one in our illustrations and interpretation panels and so forth, which is a bit disturbing, I know, for geographers, because it's not north at the top, but it does indicate the catchment nature of it. I'm going to give a very quick gallop through the Dyfi. So Avon Dyfi, Dyfi River, is the the beating heart, if you might say, the wet heart, coming down from the tops through forested areas, a lot of conifer plantations, much of which have been inappropriately planted on the tops of the hills on peatland and tending to be falling over and sometimes being restored to the original habitat, but also native woodlands, wet, a lot of very rich in bryophytes, gone back up to the top of the hill to show the peat where it's not been forested. Significant areas here of peat, which is farmed and now farmed for sheep traditionally, but also farmed for wind and hydro to a certain extent by our innovative farmers, assisted, facilitated by us in many cases. And that just shows you that it really is windy. Here are some of the, this is a commercial wind farm as opposed to a farmer-owned wind farm. And we work with them on the community benefit aspect. This is a community-owned, effectively a producer co-op, with now 2 wind turbines and 1 array of PV, solar electricity, which again we help to initiate. And then coming down the river, here's a bit of our physical heritage, the old pack bridges of cultural and historic importance into the Midlands, which are of course farmed as well. Again, mostly upland farming. There's a scarcity of good agricultural land, good in the sense, technical sense of sufficient depth and quality to support, for example, horticulture. But we are doing our best through Chris's colleagues' efforts to introduce more horticulture and to foster the small horticultural sector. But sheep and beef are the dominant agricultural produce, and in their turn, the agricultural community and industry is the backbone of the rural economy here. We're looking down on the market town of Machynlleth, so this is at the geographic heart of the biosphere, but have a population of only about 2,200, is only a village by English standards, I think, but for us, very significant. And there it is again. You see the very wide floodplain, the meandering Dyfi here has changed the course over the years. Machynlleth has its kind of quirky elements. You're no doubt fans of the Machynlleth Comedy Festival, and some of you are probably coming beginning of May. And if not, you need to come next year. Has a long established successful weekly market, whereas some others are struggling in Mid Wales, traditional markets. And it's a cultural centre as well as an economic and social centre. So this is the Canolfan o Englandor and the Senedd, the Parliament House, where allegedly o Englandor held his parliaments on this site, probably not actually in this building. The last Prince of Wales, the last time that Wales was unified under an independent leader. And we have some other medieval houses as well, and some of them have been some not medieval houses. Some more recent buildings have been converted into arts and cultural centre. Here is a symbolic bridge, Avon Dyfi. So this is the bridge across the Dyfi, which is actually the traditional meeting point or division, you might say, between North Wales and South Wales, and the ancient kingdoms that used to settle on those territories. So the bridge is a symbol of connecting as well as being a historic structure in its own right. But the roads are very prone to flooding, which is serious disruption to communications. Although I haven't got a photograph of it here, this situation has just been addressed by Welsh Government building quite visually intrusive flyover to avoid these floods, which has been a bit controversial. Here is one of the most significant parts of the visitor economy in recent years, the Centre for Alternative Technology. It's celebrated 50 years of being open, but actually recently closed to day visitors apart from pre-booked groups, but still very strong and significant in its research and education, particularly activities. It's got postgraduate MScs of various stripes there. So they're a strong supporter of the biosphere, and perhaps one of the reasons why this area is so vibrant in terms of mixed cultures that are very keen to improve the way we live and more lightly. There's another one here. This is Montgomeryshire Wildlife Trust facility at the Dyfi Osprey project, which is again an important part of the way that visitors can come here in and appreciate this is a community trying to live more sustainably and also observe, enjoy wildlife. This is the estuary now. This is the North Bank, Abu Dhabi, holiday village, causing certain problems with in the winter where many houses are unoccupied. This is the estuary mouth. It's a very mobile and very well studied by researchers estuary. The sandbanks are moving, and this is under threat from flood, both from the sea and the community of Borth just here, which I think we've probably got a picture of. Oh, here are the salt marshes. So this is part of the SAC in the estuary. The dunes, also an important site at the tip of the estuary. Here's the raised peat bog, Corsfachno, and here is Borth, the village I was coming to on the southern side, and under threat of flooding, not just from the sea, but also from behind, as indeed is Corsfachno. So in terms of the biosphere looking over the next several decades, serious risk to the core areas and to some of the communities that live around it. There's Aberystwyth, which is the university town, which sounds huge, but actually isn't huge. And that also is a cultural centre for Wales in terms of the Welsh language, and also under threat from the sea. So after a very quick gallop, just a quick nod to some of the case studies, activities that have been carried out in the name of the biosphere. In these cases, all by not-for-profits, led by not-for-profits, usually in collaboration with each other and other partners, grant-fed. So there's Chris, you can see here. Dyfi is the branding we've been using for a series of projects over recent years to do with stimulating and growing and supporting the local food economy. So not so much the mainstream beef and sheep livestock, which is usually for export, that I mentioned earlier, but the horticulturalists, egg producers, and so forth, the smaller scale, where the produce is not only grown but eaten locally. That's the distinction, and grown in an agroecological manner as well. So those are the distinctive characteristics of this relatively small sector that we're trying to grow. Here we have a nod to another, I suppose the other main strand in very recent years, which is outdoor health, green social prescribing. So this is again partnership between two not-for-profits, Coed and Ecodevi, providing opportunities for people to go in groups into the natural environment, enjoy themselves, have fun, learn something about and experience the natural environment, often not in any kind of didactic sense, but just experiential, and critically improve their health and well-being. And that's really the crux of it, is a well-being project. And this is an agenda that's being pursued, of course, all over the UK, but including in Wales. And we're on a long path, sounds like a very long path, towards mainstreaming of this. So we've done piloting activities of this, now demonstration projects, and we are now working more constructively and closely with the health boards, for example, as to how this could be rolled out and used more. This one down here that's a horse. This is a flower meadow. So this is a project called Dyfi Meadows, which is finished last year, run by another not-for-profit, and it provided management advice and also some infrastructure support to smallholders mostly, and some farmers, to improve their planning and management of grassland, particularly with flowering meadows in mind, how to improve the biodiversity while also helping the farmer or smallholders business plan. That just gives just a small selection of the projects that have been carried out in the name of the biosphere. This is our current framing of where we want to go for the future. These 4 blue boxes here are the themes that we see ourselves working on. So working with farmers and foresters and smallholders to improve their financial viability insofar as it's possible, present circumstances, while also helping biodiversity and developing a regenerative local economy. So many things come in there, including the sustainable tourism economy, facilitating and enabling wider and deeper participation. So obviously a lot of outreach work, but also the kind of community grassroots projects that people really want to get involved in and benefit from, such as active travel. And sharing knowledge and learning, well, that's with you folks and the wider UNESCO network, other areas in Wales as well, and by whatever means. I better move on. I think we can always return to any of that. So just to touch on why I've used this rather peculiar title of Light Touch Coordinator, I'm not actually the Biosphere coordinator, even though when I move into the UNESCO family, then I am. And I behave as if I am, but I don't actually have the title, and nor do I have the budget. So this is actually who I work for. It's an organization called Eire, which is a development trust. And our aims are very similar to the Biosphere aims, and we were instrumental in helping the transition between the old kind of biosphere that existed from 1973, which is basically a super nature reserve, didn't add much value really at all to anything because it didn't bring any extra powers or community engagement with it. And we were instrumental in helping that transition to the modern biosphere that we all are now, where it's about people and place together and the win-win situations, and not about fencing things off, but about appropriate development. So Eire is only one of the partners in the biosphere, but actually is a key partner. So this map, some of you will know, produced by UNESCO National Commission, and that just here we are. So we are quite small physically compared to some of the others. Oh, look at GSA, huge. And North Devon, of course, quite big. They've expanded a couple of times since they became the first of these modern biospheres in the sequence. We were the second. And I'm not going to labour this, but this is common to many of us in the UK and Ireland family, that we struggle for resources, basically, because although we are an international designation, and therefore the state and the various organs of the state benefit from that and should be supporting it financially, they do so in variable degrees. And in Wales, they struggle to do so far. So what we've actually got is a collection of willing partners, which does include everybody you need. So not just farmers and farming unions and business and community, not-for-profits such as Eire and Welsh Government and local authorities. So they're in the room and working on it, but not actually putting any cash in, apart from in small amounts. And as a result, following our last review, partners decided that's not really sustainable as a way forward. We've done a lot of good work, but it's not been strategic. It's been led by opportunity and resource. So in that circumstance, drawing on my experience, I just wanted to touch on a few thoughts, which will be more relevant to some biospheres than others, probably. Yes, we have been under-resourced. We continue to be under-resourced at the moment. But we do have, and we have had enough enthusiastic people to actually be to make something of this status. Collaborating within the brand. So this refers to some of the projects we've seen have been good examples where not-for-profits, including Eire, have collaborated with other entities locally who've got common interests, complementary skills and expertise, and have got together to say, right, here's a need in the community. How can we intervene? How can we do it together and make a joint bid, effectively, whether for a contract or more likely for a grant? That seems to me an ideal situation within the biosphere, using the brand to foster this collaboration. But we have to recognise the limitations and difficulties in it. Each of those entities has its own interests and wants to protect its own future and its own financial security, and it's got its own staff. So there's generally a tension between how open book partners are prepared to be and a certain amount of discussion required each time as to how to go through that process. Partnership working more broadly, and including the partnership or the board, which some biospheres have instead. I just wanted to observe that in practice, while it's the institution, let's say the local authority, that signs up, inevitably it's represented by individuals. In that case, including elected members, so councillors and officers. And the success of the partnership working and whether that partner actually contributes and gets anything from it in practice depends in large part on that individual in practice. Not supposed to, but they are critical. And when you've got a room which is well stacked with individuals representing their employer, but actually they're enthusiasts and they understand it, that's when it sings. And when you've got more people who are there because they've been told to come and they don't really quite get it or see how it relates to their core business, then it's more like a bit of porridge. So working with the willing is quite key. And that's not just the people around the official partnership table. That's just individuals, whether in conservation groups or not organized at all really, but where they make themselves known and they want to get associated with wider work, and we can provide some glue or some sort of small assistance. Working with the energies can really make things happen. And that widens the circle of involvement and identification. And by identification, I mean the number of people who think not just, well, I've heard of this Biosphere thing and I'm vaguely aware of UNESCO, but start to think, well, it does actually mean something to me. And okay, I live in this particular village, and that's the way I think of myself. And I might think of myself being part of the wider Dyfi Valley, Royal Dyfi community as well, for sure. That's my circle. And sometimes I go to Aberystwyth, but also thinking, oh yeah, if I just sort of look over the hill here a bit, I'm also part of this wider community, which is more diverse and provides me with different things. And I can think of myself also as being a Dyfi Biosphere citizen, and by that, a member of the UNESCO family. I'm speaking a bit sort of ambitiously there. In order to widen this circle, then for many people, I'm going back to organizations such as local authorities here particularly, we have to demonstrate that the UNESCO brand and the bother of identifying with it and doing with it and coming to meetings particularly does provide some value for the partners, as well as the collective good, if you like. So how can we move from this biosphere thing being a nice to have because, oh, well, its vision is great, we'll want to get there, yeah, but actually in my day job, I'm too busy doing this. How do you connect those things? And in principle, it's got to be by demonstrating the added value of the status, the added value of working together. And I think some of the project activities that we've done have done that. In some cases, they really wouldn't have happened had it not been for us. Sometimes they would. So then you've got, okay, how can, going back to this involvement identification, huge number of things being carried out already by all sorts of people in the biosphere, which work towards that wider vision. But they're not even aware of the biosphere sometimes. So this is very much work in progress. How can we help more people understand the value that they already provide to working towards a more sustainable future, and make them more explicit their connection to the Biospheres mission, to UNESCO, to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act we have in here as our overarching legislation for wellbeing and sustainability, and through that to the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that more or less finishes it. I'll just move that slide up for a minute, because this is our pitch to Welsh Government for a more serious, financially based partnership, where we need substantive multi-year funding in order to live up to the cachet and the responsibility that we have to be the flagship area in Wales for sustainable development. I finished there.
That's fantastic. Would you mind sharing the slides with us, Andy?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Through you, is it?
Pardon? Yes, through me. Yes,
yep,
just
sure.
forward to me, and then I can forward them either to anyone who wants them, or certainly to the group. Now, any questions? Who's got some questions? Any questions, anyone? Just any raised hands? Let's just see. Maybe I've missed. Oh, Martha.
Yeah, thank you. That was really interesting and really relevant to some discussions, as I'm sure Sally will agree, that we're having at the moment about like potential future structures for our biosphere. And some of the things you're saying are really resonating, because there's lots of the same sort of approach that we're considering at the moment. So I was just wondering if that you had anything, and maybe this will already be on your website, that sort of documents this, or this process, or like case studies about how this has worked, because I feel like that will be, having someone who's already gone through this will be really helpful for us to be able to demonstrate, like, look, here's a model, and and this is what happened when they did this, that kind of thing.
I wish I could say so. I have to admit that the documenting and also the monitoring and evaluation have not been as strong as they should be generally, and that's a reflection of the ongoing wheel of work that is inevitable in any small business or organization that is always needing to get more resource. And the temptation is to do something, deliver it, jump onto the next thing without due reflection. And that's something we have to change as well. In terms of the reflections on the process, no, I haven't written this down. Not in that way. We will reflect on that suggestion and see if there's any. If I do find there's something that speaks to it a bit, then I'll send that to Sally as well.
That would be fantastic. Or if you wouldn't mind us perhaps picking your brains a bit further at some point in future.
Oh, sure. Well, Ed knows where I live.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm not disappearing completely. So in terms of practicalities, my email address, my work email address will remain live for several months yet.
Thank you, Andy. That's very generous of you. Jo.
Yeah, that was a really interesting presentation, Andy. Thanks so much. I'm so glad that I tuned in for that, because so much of it resonated, as Martha said. And although we here in the Isle of Man have a sort of surety of funding to a certain extent, because we're part of the government, we face most, if not all, of the challenges that you've raised. And I thought the expression "working with the willing," absolutely, that's what we do. We spent ages trying to break down false walls, and people saying this is our project, it's not your project, and we're saying, but we're all citizens of the biosphere, we it's all for the greater good and all of that stuff. And we tend to sort of focus our efforts now on collaborations and projects with people who are kind of amenable to the idea, and then hopefully that grows out from there. And I absolutely, the glue, when you said the biosphere is the glue that holds it together, that's that's an expression we use all the time here. It's if we do nothing else other than to sort of spread our tentacles and bring some stuff together, then that's. So I just wanted to say how relevant that was. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jo. I'm going to beat you out the door, aren't I? Ha.
Thank you, Jo. Yeah, I think we both will be looking at what we can learn from you all and how we can actually gain from all the experiences that you've had. Any other questions? I had a question about your wonderful project that you're actually getting further out into the community and into the Welsh Government with the growing of local food and getting the population to recognise about growing that and eating it. That sounds like something we are starting, and there's some people on the Isle of Wight doing that, and we have the delivery of produce, but it'd be lovely to have that project and to learn what you've been doing there. Is that something that you could
yes most certainly. I'll invite Chris Higgins, who might want to come in a moment, but just in a nutshell, with the first funded project that's directly speaking to that we've carried out was a few years ago. We called it mixed farming. And we've got, I don't know if the situation is common to where you are, but nowadays, if you talk to farmers about growing veg, mostly they will say, oh, we can't do that. The soil is too thin, the climate is too inauspicious. And even if they are interested, they've lost the skills and experience and also the machinery that are required to do it commercially in today's circumstance, as opposed to for their own table, as used to be done very commonly. So at Chris's instigation, we used a historic learning approach and looked back to see which fields did support horticulture or arables, but cereals as well, in the past, and used that as a conversation tool to say, well, look, okay, there are those limitations you've expressed are real, but actually we have the historic evidence to draw on to show the future can be different. So it's this is quite often learning from the past, changing it to present circumstances, taking it forward. Chris, do you want to add anything?
That's all grand by me, Andy. I don't think I've got much to add.
Thank you.
But yes, I suppose we should know in terms of learning from each other and so forth. The currently funded projects that we have on that theme end at the end of this calendar year. There will be reports, and there are reports from the previous phases on the Dyfi pages of the Dyfi Biosphere website. But if you can't find them, give us a shout, or give Chris a shout, even better.
Thank you. And has that been in collaboration with Aberystwyth with the university, or is there and are you making roads into those collaborations with the university, with research? Is there some way that you've investigated with that? I was thinking about you were talking to Martha about not being able to keep the data. It's something that they love to do, isn't it?
Yes, well, to a certain extent. So Aberystwyth University were an active partner with EcoDevi and others in the Max Farming project, but it wasn't from the agronomy side, and there's very strong agronomy in Aberystwyth. It was from the data management and archiving and information needs aspect, which was valuable. On the wider research front, we did hold a joint seminar only a few months back in Aberystwyth University with some of the researchers across many different topics, which was held under the Biosphere banner. So there are connections, there is goodwill, but we've not managed to turn that into a joint strategy or anything substantive, like can they be a monitoring partner, which has been suggested, for example, by Mark Maxton. So work in progress.
Yes, and that's of course true for all our biospheres. If we could all work with local universities to achieve some of those goals that we perhaps where students are actually needing those projects as well.
Yes, one observation on that is, again, often it comes down to the individuals. So while ideally we'd have some sort of MOU or something with the university as an institution, that's not the only level that's pertinent. Coming down to divisions, departments, whatever. Sometimes that's more practical. A school might be the scale that can see, okay, I can have this structural relationship with Biosphere for these particular added value reasons. In practice, actually, it's been individual lecturers and researchers that have made things happen with us.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Roger. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry, love.
Thank you. Yes, just to comment on the last thing about research, but I want to ask a question as well. Yeah, I'm the FENS candidate site. I'm chairman of the steering group, as I said, the FENS candidate site in Cambridgeshire, and the research is good. We've got a huge amount of people, students from the University of Cambridge now working across the FENS, and from other universities as well. We've even had some chap from Eire at Watt University working on beetles, so it's drawn people in to get the information. Our problem has been trying to get all the local authorities on side, and some of them are very happy with the idea, and the key local authority, which is Fenland District Council, are not happy at all. One of the questions they ask, this is my question now, it comes back to let me get this right. So I wrote it down somewhere. It's what's in it for them? What is the added value? Well, when they talk about added value, they're talking about pounds and pence going into Finland. The added value or the other added values, which are sometimes difficult to calculate in terms of pounds, that they're not interested in that. They want to know how is the biosphere going to bring money into our local economy, and can you demonstrate from other biospheres in other parts of Britain how it's done that? And really, we can sort of put down the things we think it might work, but we're getting very little information from elsewhere in the UK. So can you and Dyfi or anybody else help with that?
Well, I'd say two things. One is on the pound, shilling and pence things. We do have the series of reports from the UK National Commission, don't we? The added value of UNESCO.
Yeah.
That's not just about biospheres, but geoparks and national parks as well. But still, it is a source. It is a useful resource. If anybody hasn't found that, then the National Commission website will no doubt provide it. The other thing is to sympathise with you that the value is often taken to mean pounds, shillings and pence.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's showing my age there, isn't it, really? But value explicitly in the context of government policy in Wales, and particularly with sustainable development, is other aspects of value as well. So yeah, I mean, if that's what they say corporately, then you have to run with that, I suppose. It may be, I'm teaching to suck eggs here, Roger, perhaps. Hopefully you're not just in contact through the economic development function. They may be the dominant function of the local authority, but of course they will have biodiversity functions and so forth, cultural functions as well. And maybe there are enthusiasts in those departments that can somehow help you demonstrate by having them inside the authority that actually it is relevant to their climate change net zero plans in ways which are more than financial.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
Yeah, we're also waiting for a change of government locally as well, I hope. We'll see. Thanks for that. Useful.
Perhaps Nicholas, you'd like to come in here and just tell us about what you're planning on doing for your dissertation.
Of course, yes. So dissertation is going to focus on UNESCO Biospheres in the UK in particular. And the goal is to also work potentially with Southern Ayrshire Biosphere and Galloway as well. And ideally, the intended outcome would be to talk to all the different stakeholders involved at the local level, partner level as well, and try and determine potential and apply a toolkit that can offer direction over the next 10 years for valuing the biospheres in the UK. The goal of this is to try and identify potential avenues for funding, partnership with outside sources based in the UK. This could be private sector as well, and how to also just value the natural capital that's there, really communicating the value of these ecosystem services that biospheres provide to the general public, to communities, and then also kind of upholding and underlining this community aspect of the biospheres and this involvement with kind of like the wider UNESCO family.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, so I know that this has been a big question. What does becoming a biosphere mean as a value for us all, to communities to become a biosphere, which we want to encourage? And yeah, thank you very much for doing that project. And I think that's thanks to Mark, isn't it? Started to get the ball rolling.
It is.
Joe,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Joe, you have a project already as well on that's going. You've got a student working on that. I think Joe's.
No, I just wanted to comment really, because I'm sorry for coming in late. We're in the middle of lambing. I'm in the middle of lunch. But I mean, we've had very consistent support from our 3 local authorities actually. Over the period, despite the financial pressures they've got themselves. But I'll just say, I think they probably look for different things. I certainly think the economic development aspect has been very important. So things like, businesses being part of our UNESCO trail and linked with other UNESCO designations in Scotland's quite powerful. And the work we've done with businesses, I think, resonates. But having said that, I mean, I think probably all our 3 local authorities are lacking a really thin on their countryside teams now. At least one of them doesn't have a biodiversity officer any longer. So I think there is an element of seeing that aspect of the biospheres work as meeting a need that they can't meet. And certainly also, I think for South Ayrshire, in particular, probably, the educational work in schools has been important. So I think in a way it's finding what ticks boxes for different local authorities, because it's got to have some value for them in meeting the targets and the aspirations they have.
Thank you. Melanie.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Yeah, about the value, it's funny because I only joined a year ago and I immediately had to dive into the periodic review because it's been a decade that we've been designated. So we have to prove again to UNESCO with the periodic review and that we want to continue. So it's a bit like reapplying really. And it's been an interesting journey because some of our partners competing or partnerships or some organizations have challenged us about the value. What's in it for me? What's your tangible outputs? And it's been a really interesting journey because one of the first answer to that is the cross-sector interdisciplinary work partnership. And the best proof of that is that over the past 10 years, all of the partners have remained. I would say 95% of the key organizations locally, Brighton and Hove buses, I mean, the transport company, the conservation organizations, some key organizations here, they've remained in the partnership, the South Downs National Park too. So I think that's the best proof. And so it's really about this knowledge sharing and this cross-sector, collaborative network that is amazing. But it is true that it's not always easy to prove the tangible output. So I'll share with you on the chat as well the report that we've recently shared with, presented to the committee at the Brighton and Hove City Council, just to get their endorsement for our periodic review submission. And so that was a really good exercise for us to actually verbalize that. I mean, to put it in words, what's a biosphere? What is it bringing to the city and to our area in terms of value? We've used some of that UNESCO UK report that has been mentioned. But also we're mentioning very concrete examples of funding that we've been able to source in the past 10 years, and tangible projects that have emerged of the partnership, not all delivered by us, because we cannot be only a delivery vehicle because of resources, but it's fine. I think it's also about acknowledging that we are generating network, cross-sector networks, but also making projects possible by intertwining people together. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyway, I just thought I'd share that.
You're muted, Sally.
Thank you, Martha. Any other questions for Andy or for Melanie or anyone else?
Just actually asking, sorry, I don't know where the button is for the hand up. But how do you work with businesses? Is there any schemes that you have at all? Or is there, how do businesses associate themselves with the designation for you?
Sorry, Jake, was that to me?
Yeah, or to anyone as well.
Well, I mean, GSA is, you're now the market leader, I think, in this business in our family, aren't you? Having not only got what most of us have got, which is some kind of voluntary charter as a vehicle to have conversations with businesses and hopefully sign them up to certain values and potentially actions as well. But you've gone the step further than that and actually, what's the word? Not copyrighted, registered.
We've got a certification mark and a credit.
Certified, yeah, certification scheme, which we look on with envy, because there's so much development work required to get to that stage. So yes, we do have a charter, and that was actually drawn up by some of the businesses in the tourism sector here in the visitor economy. And it's quite straightforward. And the second sector, well, it's a related sector that's using it currently, is the hospitality sector, and particularly cafes, where we've tweaked it a bit because we've developed a sub-brand called Blast W Taste, which is for producers, but more so at the moment, the actual users, retailers and cafes and restaurateurs who use local produce, who make an effort to at least go as far as it's possible, for them to demonstrate to their customers and potential customers that they are making that effort. So those businesses, if they want to take part, they have to sign the charter as well. The actual assistance we're able to provide is very limited because of our limited resources. So from time to time, we'll have particular grant aid for a particular period of time whereby we can be more useful than the other times. So we've seen that, for example, in the visitor economy, where for a number of years consecutively we got money from Visit Wales, which is an arm of Welsh Government, to do projects to do with tourism development, but also marketing. And that really made a critical difference to whether, or the extent to which the businesses were able to justify their time participating in meetings and joint planning and so forth. So that, yeah, we have done some business engagement and we need to do more.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Martha.
Hi, yes, another thing that occurred to me, and this is something that's coming up for us a little bit more. I can see it increasing even further. So I'd be interested to know how you've dealt with this. Is people asking us to get involved in or comment on local campaigns, planning applications that they disagree with. And at the moment, I think our kind of take on it is that we're not, we don't have the resources actually to kind of really get into detail with a lot of these things. But that's probably not our role, is to sort of say yes or no, or get behind it, or kind of be campaigners. But there are other ways that as a biosphere we could perhaps support or take note of, or at least sort of monitor what's happening on these lines. But it's an interesting, it seems to be a thing that people have an expectation that we'll somehow either be able to influence or at least have a say on. So it'd be really interesting to know whether that's come up for you and how you've tackled it.
It does come up. For example, commercial wind farms, low-flying aircraft, potential reintroduction of species are some of the main issues. And the two things I would point to really is, one, that the partnership itself does not see that it has a role in direct intervention in particular developments or proposed developments. And partly that's because some of the members of the partnership are themselves local planning authorities, and so therefore they would be compromised if the partnership that they were signed up to was putting forward a position on a particular issue. So that's you might say a constraint, but also philosophically it's not where the partners see that's where their energies are best spent, and that where their stance is best placed. But rather to respond to such situations, firstly by going back to basics with, well, particularly the developer, if there normally will be some sort of instigator developer, encouraging, because that's all we can do, them to follow best practice in two ways. So one is their design. So if it's a wind farm, are they avoiding or repeat and so forth. So design, and also best practice in terms of community engagement. So not waiting till the last minute and telling people and saying, what do you think then, but earlier stages. So that's what we did, for example, when UNESCO asked us about a query they'd had from a local politician about a proposed wind farm. We provided them with some facts as far as we knew them, and saying that's what we were doing, rather than take a position on that particular development. But the other thing where I wish we had the capacity and the means to do more of this is to help, where possible, some of those issues to be discussed in a more temperate manner than sometimes they are, based on better understanding not only of the facts, but particularly other parties, other people's perceptions and values. And again, you can see that in wind. Again, currently it's come around here, actually, because being a river valley, we're surrounded by hills, and that's where people want to put wind turbines. And there's another round now of proposals. And there are some community councils, so these are the smallest units, who have refused to formally discuss the issue, the proposal, because last time round it was so contentious it split the community. So this is an opportunity, in principle, for our biosphere, I think for any biosphere, to provide a space and the structure and the process whereby people with different views and understandings can communicate with each other, whether that be on a hill walk or down the pub in a room, or by whatever creative means, to not only put their viewpoint, but more importantly, to listen. And creating that space, which is, it might not be completely neutral, but neutral enough to be safe for people, is really quite a trick and requires a fair amount of resource.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for a brilliant presentation. Fantastic. And sometimes we're nervous about these things beforehand, aren't we? But your experience just fills the whole screen. So thank you very much. Now, is there anything anybody wants to, for the last just couple of minutes, is there anybody, future things that are happening, anything happening in your biosphere you want to share with anybody? Of course, if there's any more questions you have for Andy and his experience, please do, you know, get either touch with me or directly with Andy. And anything that you think that might be useful for us as a community to learn and share, then please, again, share with me. And the other thing I'd like to ask you to do is please share the Zoom, or send me people's email addresses so I can get them to come to the meeting, so everyone has the opportunity to come. We're going to be doing separate topics. We're going to be looking at other biospheres. So, you know, just to make sure that nobody misses out that might like to do that. So is there anything anybody would like to tell us that you're doing so we can all come along? You're not doing anything. I somehow don't believe that at all, because you're all the ones that are doing things. That's why you're here. So on the 29th and 30th of June, if you're on your way to the Isle of Wight, come and celebrate. We're having a Biosphere Festival celebration on the Isle of Wight. And basically what that means, that if you're going for a walk, it's a Biosphere walk. If you're having a cup of coffee, it's a Biosphere cup of coffee. So everything anybody's doing, whether it's a jumble sale, it's a Biosphere jumble sale, because we want people, exactly what you're saying, Andy, is getting that on side, getting the willingness, and getting people to recognise that we're all part of the same Biosphere family. We're all part of that Biosphere community. So if you're down this way, look us up. It'd be lovely to see you. And again, thank you, Andy. Any other business? Melanie, yay.
Yay, thank you, Sally. Actually, I think your festival concept is really interesting, and I'd be really interested to hear you talk about it, actually.
Yes, that's on the agenda. I'm going to be getting Martha and Georgia to come and talk about that as well. So yes, it's a logistics nightmare, isn't it, Martha? But she's doing amazing. She's got spreadsheets, a bit like Joe from the Isle of Man, spreadsheets going everywhere. And honestly, I can't read them, but you know, it's wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Oh, Andy.
Well, speaking of Joe, I can't fail but notice at the bottom of the chat there, I presume that's Joe behind that moniker there, making an offer that we shouldn't ignore.
Oh, Joe, yes. Is she making an offer? Oh, yes.
I think just to expand on our work with businesses, is that the one you meant, Andy? So Sally is do a little presentation in May, actually. So yeah, I'm really happy to kind of include that in May if that's what people want to hear about.
That would be wonderful. Yes, so next month is Joe, and as you heard from Joe from the Isle of Man, she's retiring, and we want to make the absolute most of your amazing abilities, coordinators. I know, Andy, you don't label yourself as that, but you know, we don't want to lose this experience. So thank you very much. Very much. Do get in contact with me if you need anything or want to suggest anything, and we really look forward to seeing you in May, Joe. And thank you from the bottom of my heart, Andy, for all your work in promoting biospheres all these years as well. Otherwise the Isle of Wight would not be here. Thank you everyone. Have a wonderful month. Take care. Bye bye.
Thanks, Sally.
Bye.
Thanks.